Agora a gente tem a apresentação dos resultados do Free Will Inventory, que a gente rodou no semestre passado, em junho. So now we're going to have the results for the Free Will Inventory, which we run in June. People, all of the great part of the participants responded to the questionnaire. And no, I'll give you more details there. Vamos. Cadê os dois? Não. Pode ficar com essa. Explica. Is Thomas there? That would be important.
Yes.
To have a feedback from for the OG in the field. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically what we done, we had 1,004 people enrolled for the last event. Very different from our current situation. We have much less people. So there was a great opportunity to run the Free Will Inventory with a big number of people. And one of our main interests in the project was to see if a meeting like this one interferes, it's able to change beliefs. So the structure is very similar with the chess intervention that I showed you on Monday. The idea is to treat an academic event as a clinical intervention. After 5 days of talks, will people change their beliefs about free will, change their beliefs about physicalism, dualism, change their beliefs about religious matters? So that was our main intention, to see how changeable the level of mutability of beliefs after an intervention. I would say a high level intervention, because look, we have people with different approaches on free will agency and its ethical implications. And it seems, at least prima facie, that we could promote some changes of belief that is based on the power of learning, that was measuring the power of learning generated by such an event, an academic event, in terms of their beliefs. Any considerations so far, Renato?
Yeah, it's exactly as Gabriel has been saying. This idea was to use the event a little bit as an intervention, not as an intervention, but to see if it could have an effect as if it were an intervention per se.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Obviously, people are not aware that we are using the meeting as an intervention, but the meeting is being used as if it were an intervention. Perfect. So we had more than 600 answers at the first run, but we had obviously a great loss of population in the second run. So what was the pre-test? The pre-test was applying free will inventory during enrollment. Then the meeting works as if it were an intervention. Then we collected the same questionnaires again. So we had one version, the newest validated version of Free Will Inventory in Portuguese. We have the last version of Free Will Inventory in English, because we have enrollments from Brazil and from abroad. And we had also the CRS. The CRS 5, the shorted one. There is the Central Religious Scale, a very simple questionnaire, but that which gives you a little bit of how religious are those people, especially in terms of beliefs and attitudes. So I want to correlate that as well, right? So we submitted the project to Plataforma Brasil, which means literally Brazilian platform. There is the platform we need to submit any sort of empirical research, especially those with humans. We submitted via Plataforma Brasil. We submitted to the Ethics Committee in Social Sciences in my university, the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. It was approved. We started as soon as it was approved, because the meeting was just beginning. And I mean, we have a great turnout, I think, 600, more than 600 people. 631 people, so that's a lot. I mean, it's a good number for the free will inventory. So one of our hypotheses is that people that will have like a higher score in the CRS and the dualism part of the free will inventory, especially if they were from Judeo-Christian backgrounds, they will believe more in free will. That was one of the register hypotheses. And depending on different, let us say, religious matrices, they will have different results. Also, one of the main hypotheses was that people that are more experienced as like us, specialists in the field, they are working for like 20 years, 30 years in the field, will have less mutability, less changeability in terms of their beliefs. And people that are just new to the field will probably have more mutability of beliefs because they are presented to something really new, really striking. And that's, I think, is a very plausible hypothesis somehow, because, I mean, let's imagine one single person. She's an undergrad in philosophy or law. She just had access to traditional teaching in those areas. And for the first time in her life, she sees the Libet experiment. She has 2 or 3 talks in a more with a more deterministic inclination. Probably this girl will be kind of shocked with our kind of approach. But at the same time, we knew as well that our roster is very, let us say, compatibilist. Our roster is far from being the most deterministic people. And also we have a variety of approaches. And so we're not really certain of what kind of results we're gonna have. But even though we knew that the effect will be mild, because we are not like a group of super determinists here, right? So what else? I think that's kind of, and we had also we knew because of the nature of the head and the co-head of the event, that we have mostly people from philosophy and law. So we want to compare just 2 populations as well in terms of beliefs. And kind of expecting that the law people have a stronger hold on free will than the philosophy ones, because, I mean, for various reasons, philosophers used to doubt about, let us say, more solidified beliefs in society. So there was an expectation as well. So, I mean, that explains the design, and that explains the hypothesis. Now, Renato will come up with part of the results. And then we're going to do something else as well to consider a little bit what we think would be like improvements to the free will inventory at the end. Okay.
Okay. So just one thing on this idea. As it happened, I was in Ghent with Marcel, and we did a free will inventory associated with vignettes for punishment. And what happened is, when we got our data, that was first semester law students. And the thing is, when we got our data and we started analyzing it, it was really skewed against free will. And I mean, we were not expecting that. We were expecting a small difference between first year or first semester and last year. I mean, maybe some differences. But what we found is we couldn't do the second part because of the pandemics. It was planned to go on we were planning to take the results. We took them live in person. So we were planning to take the results in person the same way the next week. And then the lockdown came 1 week before we got the second part. So, but when we were analyzing this first one, we looked at the results and they were very, very skewed against free will and pro-determinism. And we thought that was very weird. We looked for other law student data that didn't show up. We looked at other Flemish data that didn't show up. We looked at psychology students' data in Flemish, and that didn't show up. So we were trying to think what is happening here. And then I was talking to this philosophy professor at the Philosophy of Law, where we collected the data. Great free will skeptic, Professor Ian Verplatze, who is in law school in Ghent, and he told me, oh, which class was that? Okay, so that was first semester law. All right, I remember I gave a class 1 week before on free will. My class on free will or against free will, it was an entire class, 2 hours or something. Against free will was 1 week before this free will inventory was taken. So that is the greatest manipulation we could have thought about. So
exactly.
That is why we thought a bigger manipulation, because just reading a quick text has been proven kind of weak, right?
That shows the power of education. One class by a philosopher of law, there is a hardcore determinist showing scientific data in favor of determinism, has such an impact that is incomparable with the other results in the same university, in the same community, in the same area of a country. So I think that shows a lot.
I'd really like to test students before Thomas' class and then after Thomas'
class, for example.
After Thomas' class, yeah, that would be interesting. Okay, so this is the rationale before. So the results. I am really sorry to disappoint you all. I'm going to show you just raw data descriptives. The software for statistical analysis, I just started to try to get it after the event, and due to the pandemics, nothing was working in my university at UFMG. I sent 1,000 emails and I called them. Nobody would pick up. I had to talk to a friend that works in the dean's office to find someone that could get me the software. I wouldn't, use a non-official software. So I got this software 10 days ago, and I really wanted to use the SPSS because that's what we used with the other data. So what we have now is just a treated data. We had to put it in form. So what we did was just demographics, and then we asked highest academic level, area of expertise, and language. That's something we're working on, language and free will beliefs. Religiosity, if people do have a religion, what was that? Which is not coded here because it was all kinds of things. And then we did the free will inventory complete. And later we had this 5-question questionnaire on religious practices and religious beliefs. So I will give you the raw data. Sorry to you all that we haven't had time to, I haven't had the time to do the proper analysis, but I think you will have at least a first idea of what the data is. So this is just the data for the first event we had.
Let me just say something else also important. We already knew that we're gonna have a big loss of population because it's easier to convince people to take part in in a questionnaire like that when they are enrolling, but after the event, no one cares. Okay, took part in the event. It's fun. I'm not gonna respond the same questionnaire again. So of course we had devised a statistical analysis all based in non-parametric mathematics, obviously, because we knew in principle that we're not going to have balanced samples and we will not be ready to apply ANOVA and COVA, those most parametric control methods. So we devised a bunch of strategies for validation, testing power in this non-parametric line of research. For some of us, non-parametric analysis seems to be a little weaker, but I don't know. As I have a lot of kind of contact with people from psychiatry. I mean, they are just used to that because they have bizarre samples, very strange people. So I got some training on that, and I think that kind of guarantees the results because we use all the measures to test. Power to validate. Just a little brief comment on the type of analysis we envisaged since the beginning. Right.
Okay. So the first thing, this is a very different population from what we normally get. I mean, there was this study I participated even. I took part. I responded to the questionnaire in Uri's last event. So that is the one I know that only did specialists. And what we have. So the first thing that struck us is that we have a lot of different areas. This is a very interdisciplinary field. If our initial idea that most of the people would come from philosophy and law was right, something we did not expect is that we had a lot of people from several other areas, from physics, from
biology, a lot of people from physics,
history,
biology, psychology, psychiatry. That was the
medicine. So this,
medicine. Yeah.
Let me show you what are these. One here is philosophy. So we have 44.2%, 279 people that are from philosophy. 2 is law, and we had 101 people, subjects from law, 16%, 12.8% from psychology, and 4.6% from neuroscience. So 0.8 said neurolaw, 2.5 medicine, sciences of the state or state studies, which is a course we have. These are coded here because of special interests. Social state studies, which are I teach to, it's 2.4, and social sciences 14.9, and humanities 14.9, and 2.4 and 14.9. It's others from several different specialties and different areas. Some of them really amazing. Okay, so another thing that is very interesting, we had a very
qualified sample.
Yes, a very qualified sample, and this is the academic level. So fundamental academic level, it's 1. We had 18, 2.9%. Undergrads were 2. 36.8%, and then bachelors, people with a bachelor degree, 26.6%, 9.7 was masters underway, 11.7. This is the 5. It was people with a master's already and the doctor underway, and 12.4 of the participants were already with their PhDs in hand. So it is a very interesting sample. So to see differences with other students, with studies with different kinds of population, this will be interesting.
And I think that helps a lot, the hypothesis of the changeability, the mutability, because undergrads and master students even if they already have some formation, they are in this moment of an intellectual career in which the big leap forward is given, you know. Of course, everyone knows that from 0 to 6 is the most malleable phases of your brain, but it's still, in terms of, a higher level formation, I think undergrads and master students are ready to learn new things and do like small revolutions in their set of beliefs.
Okay, gender-wise, 1 is female, 2 is male, 3 is non-binary. Language, this is something that is important for us. We've been trying to sample out differences in languages and how they affect free will beliefs. The most common language was Portuguese, naturally, so that is 1. 2 was English, 3 was Spanish, 4 was Turkish. Surprisingly, that was the the 4th biggest community. I don't really know why, but thanks to our Turkish friends. And 35 were from several different other languages, from Polish to Hindi to some I had never heard of that I had to look up at Google. So a lot of different things, very interesting crowd. So religion, we had 1 for yes, I have a religion, that was 68%. No, I don't, that was 31.9%. So religions also, we had a lot of different things. People that said they had a religion. There was Christianism was by far the largest. We still haven't coded all of that because we had a lot of different answers. But 31.9% that said that do not have a religion, especially with such a big Portuguese speaking sample. It's a lot for our demographics. So that is interesting.
That is like much higher than any percentage or atheism plus agnosticism that you could possibly have in any sample in Brazil. So I think that it's not biased in a bad way, but it is somehow a tendency within the sample that we have, an academic sample with a lot of philosophers, with a lot of scientists, especially psychologists and neuroscientists, and also people that have formations in states sciences or law. They will also influenced by formations with people like you and all the professors that are into neurolaw, into bioethics. So I think this sample is far from being like a prolific sample in the generic sense. It's much more a special sample that was filtered by the nature of this conference. That's important to notice in all evaluations, of course.
Exactly. This data is really different in this aspect. And this is also interesting. So are you a researcher on the specific field of free will agency or the like? A lot of people were researchers on different fields and they explicitly told us that, but there are also a lot of researchers on this field. So it was 72.3% said they weren't, and so almost 28%, almost a third, are researchers on the field. So that is important to note as well.
This is very important because one of our main hypotheses is that people that were experts in the field or had less of a change than people that are novices in the field, as I explained in the hypothesis part of this talk.
Okay, so this part is special for Thomas. I mean, it's for everyone, but I guess Thomas will like it. So this is the free will inventory, and is a set of 15 and then 5 questions, I guess, to evaluate beliefs in free will, determinism, and dualism, and then different philosophical positions that can, spread from this various, different philosophical positions. So this is here, all these next ones are coded. 1 is strongly disagree, 2 is disagree, 3 somewhat disagree, 4 is nor agree nor disagree, 5 somewhat agree, 6 agree, and 7 strongly agree. okay? And these other ones are the ones that didn't get coded. It's just three subjects. So what is it? The first one, people always have the ability to do otherwise. And here you have the persons, so strongly disagree, 6.2, disagree, 15.8, somewhat disagree, 14.4, nor agree nor disagree, 6.3, 18.2, somewhat agree, 27.1, agree, and 11.1 strongly agree. So that is the first question, and the other ones we can see it the same way. Everything that has ever happened had to happen precisely as it did, given what happened before. This is clearly a question for determinism, and as the first one was a question for free will. And the frequencies we find here, it's for 1, 15.5%, 2, 27.3, 3, 14.9, neutral condition would be, neutral response would be 10.8, somewhat agree, 14.9, 11.9 agree, and 4.4 strongly agree. So these are very interesting results as well.
And not to interfere when others are talking, so I have to turn on the microphone again. But look, that is very interesting kind of a sample. Why? And I think that's very important to be noticed, that's very specific of our sample. It's rare to see so many atheists and agnosticists that even though are very inclined to be indeterminists, you know? People they have stronghold in science, but even though they are in favor of free will. I think that's very unique in terms of results compared to other free will inventory researches, and I think that's very influenced by the fact of this conference being a kind of a very compatibilist, or, I mean, mainly compatibilist, but a little bit libertarian as well, in terms of its philosophical matrices. And so we are showing a very special sample in which people are highly educated in science and still they believe in free will. Right?
And Marcelo has a very good comment here. I just can't leave this for later. We have almost 45% of philosophers in this crowd of subjects. And terms like, he says, I would expect terms like always, never, I'd say also, to impact very differently people with certain training, for example, logic, and without it. This is a comment regarding the first item. Thomas is happy to comment on this, and I agree with you. I mean, philosophically trained people would have a lot more problems with you know. But I think Thomas wants to.
It suffices one case to rule out the always in the beginning of the question. So, I mean, philosophers in this sense are really inclined to be suspicious about claims that start with always and never, everyone. But yeah, Thomas, jump in, please. Let's make it let's think more dynamic.
So I have some background noise I can't eliminate, so I apologize if you can't hear. I'll try to speak up.
No, it's not noisy at all.
Good. So I just want to explain why you have to have language like always in something like the free will subscale. So when we designed this, the biggest problem we had was that if you want a proper scale or a proper subscale, there has to be at least a fair amount of variance. You can't just have the score on the subscale, its ceiling. So everyone can't be 6 and 7. If we don't have the always on an item like that, the agreement is almost at ceiling. So you have to have those sorts of modifiers to bring scores down so you get some variation between people who super strongly believe in free will and people who just strongly believe in free will. And because the scores on the free will subscale are generally so high, it was the only way we could pull the scores down. So we originally didn't have that kind of very strong language with some of the items, but adding it was the only way we could actually make the scale, develop the scale in a way that was where it was possible to be validated. So if the average on the free will subscale is always like 6.5, then it's no longer helpful. That makes sense?
Kind of, but I have a different hold on that. I don't know if Renato is with me on this boat, but I think if you ask a question like always, the answer has to be binary, yes or no. Meu microfone morreu. Sorry. Barry's here with the wireless mic. So yeah, I think since if you ask peremptory questions like that, maybe the only valid answers to those questions will be binary answers, you know?
No.
Always
No.
yes, always no, because it suffices in one case to deny the whole thing.
So if I said, to take it this way, Thomas is always offensive. And I can ask you whether you strongly agree with that or somewhat disagree with that, right? And you think, well, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think he's all. I do think he's always offensive, but like I'm not like just firmly convicted. I mean, I can think back and I think, well, maybe I don't know. Like so, even at the always range, you can be very strongly think that it's true, that the always statement, or you cannot be so sure that the always statement is true. What you're not asking is whether, so the idea is that.
Thomas, can I contradict you somehow? Look,
sure,
okay, I think that's fair. That's a fair way of explaining it, but it always, okay, the magic word, it always can be asked if the disagreement is in terms of statistical distribution or levels of confidence of my belief in this claim. You know, you have a confound here, a serious confound. It is what is 6 here? I'm like 80% convinced that Thomas is aggressive, or I mean, I think Thomas is aggressive in 80% of the situations. There's a confound here about statistical distribution versus levels of confidence in my belief. That's one of the problems. This is a serious problem that kind of purposes the whole questionnaire. So I think that must, look, I bow to you, I'll say us, because we are 2 guys from martial arts. A lot of respect. I love you, but I think this is a systematic problem on the questionnaire. And we have to point it. I don't know if Renato jumps in the boat. That's a personal comment of mine, but I think we have a confound here between levels of confidence in this belief and or possible attribution of a statistical attribution of statistical distribution of this hypothesis or thesis encompassed by the question. That's my problem with it.
Just to be clear, I buy the idea that we need variation. Sorry, Gabriel, but I buy the idea that you need a distribution so you get information. And I mean, it is there is probably a logical, philosophical problem deep there, but I don't think the respondents will have that problem. I mean, you can maybe in this crowd.
I was confused responding. I was confused responding the questionnaire in lots of senses. There was some of the sentence that I say, I don't know. I think the question is just wrongly proposed, for example. And I'll show some of those cases at the end, but I'll let you respond, of course.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, it depends on what objection you're raising, but you'll find very few scales that measure sort of philosophically interesting things that aren't Likert as opposed to binary. You'll find almost no scales that are binary. in that way. So that's the first thing. So, I mean, it can't, the worry you raise is a worry that cuts across all studies involving Likert, because it's never clear what exactly you're picking out, whether it's confidence or belief, or so. I appreciate the problem. I just think it's a problem that is a problem for pretty much any scale that relies on Likert. Any scale that relies on Likert is a way of measuring it. So I agree that it's a problem. What I will say is that when we used the item, we'll just stick with the always example, that first item. When we used that example, that item, and we didn't use always, it didn't behave the same way. So the scores were much higher. So it had the effect that we intended it to have, which I don't think it would if they were confused in the way that you're suggesting people might be confused, which isn't to say lots of people aren't confused. But I'll let you guys get on with it. I'm happy to talk about this stuff. So of course, I'm not offended about anything.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thomas, I really have to say it's really nice to us to be able to present this with you here. It's sincerely fantastic. And once again, to you and everyone, sorry I didn't have the time to get a proper analysis, and this is just descriptives. But I think there's interesting stuff here. So people always have the ability to do otherwise. We've seen this. We have, haven't you? So it's, yeah. One strongly disagree, 6.2, disagree, 15.8, somewhat disagree, 14.4, neutral, 6.3, 18.2, somewhat agree, 27.1 agree, and totally agree, strongly agree, 11.1. So everything that has ever happened had to happen precisely as it did, given what happened here. There's a deterministic feature. So again, 15.5, strongly disagree, 27.3, disagree, 14.9, 10.8, 14.9. I have the bars in the end, so I think it's easier to visualize, but I just have to give the numbers to show. Okay, so the fact that we have souls that are distinct from our material bodies is what makes humans unique. These are the percentuals: 31.1, 19.2, 8.2, 11.3, 8.4, 13.6, and 7.9. People always have free will. Okay, yeah, I'll go for the bars. I think the bars are clearer than the pizzas, than the pies. I tried to do the pies because Thomas presented the pies yesterday, but the bars are clearer. So this is the bars. Just a second. Okay, so highest academic level, 1 being fundamental, 6 being PhD. This is academic, so this is, sorry. Highest academic level. Okay.
Great majority of undergrads.
Yes, but still very
Qualified sample in terms of academic formation.
Okay, so area study, so 1 philosophy, 45% almost, and then almost more than 15 law, and then psychology, and 4 neuroscience, and the other ones.
But I think we can sum sciences of the state of law, you know? I mean, they have their differences, but people concerned with the republics and how and law, and you know, they are kind of similar formations.
There is a great overlap in that. Just don't tell the students from science of the state, because
the squares of the law, they'll not mingle with them. Yeah.
Okay, so 1 here is female, 2 male, and 3 non-binary. Language, it's 1 Portuguese, 2 English, and 3 Spanish. Not a lot of variation here. So religion, this is interesting as well. 68% do have a religion, but 60 no, 68%, and then no, yeah, it's actually more than that. It's 72% and 28 without a religion. So
But
here,
that includes atheists and agnostics, some together.
Yes,
just to clarify, yeah.
and without religion. So researcher, this is, yeah, Portuguese and English were coded separately. Sorry for this, but here you can understand what the researchers are on the topic. You have almost a third of researchers on the topic. So here is the free will inventory. People always have the ability to do otherwise.
That was strong, like 6 was the great majority. If you sum 7 with 6, the crowd was pretty libertarian in our results.
Yeah, but still not as much as some of the samples we normally
for
do.
example, in
with lay people and
in lay people,
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
a little bit more determinist than the average lay people.
Yeah.
But very strong yet for a high qualified audience in science.
Exactly. So people always have the ability to do otherwise. Everything that has happened had to happen precisely as it did. This is the deterministic, given what happened before. So strongly disagree.
Stronger disagreement, but it's still less than the
are the two. Yeah.
But the lay people in general. Like,
so determinism not also a big thing, even among scientists, philosophers, and lawyers, I'd say, but still a little bit more than normal population. Yes. I mean, normal population.
Lay people population,
yeah,
let's call it.
Okay. The fact that we have souls that are distinct from our material bodies is what make humans unique. Thomas, if you want to comment the results,
any of the results, just jump in.
You have, please jump in. I mean, if you see something different or outrageous, please tell. You are the expert here. The fact that we have souls that are distinct from our material bodies is what makes humans unique. Strongly disagree is clearly the highest one, and disagree. So this is also something that normally is different. We'll have a nice time analyzing this and comparing this to.
It'll be a lot of work, to be sincere.
Yeah. And so here's a little bit on what Marcelo Fishburne asked. So we have a great deal of strongly disagree that people always have free will and disagree, maybe because we have like 45% of philosophers. I'm not sure, but that's a...
It is indeed a pretty peculiar sample.
It is.
Because when people, like, they hardly disagree that, I mean, in specific questions, but they kind of agree in more specific questions. So, I mean, that's very unique. And it seems that people are really paying attention to the questionnaire and are really into it, you know? I don't buy general claims, but I want to express my opinion pretty clear whenever it comes down to something specific. I think that's an influence, as Marcelo Fishburne brought very smartly, that this is a kind of let us say, stance of highly trained people in philosophy, and even the people from law. They have a good formation also in critical thinking and logic. I mean, that shows people they are well-formed in critical thinking in terms of approach. I would say that's biased somehow, but a high level of formation in critical thinking.
One idea that just occurred to me was separate and do a separate analysis only on philosophers.
Yeah,
and see if they, how different they are.
Whenever we do the philosophy versus law people, you're gonna see that very clearly.
Yeah. So
Gabriel, Renato.
Yes, please, Thomas.
Please.
So here's an example of this from teaching my own students philosophy of law and/or free will. If I asked most philosophers whether or not cases of duress or necessity are cases where the agents don't have free will. So I put a gun to your head and told you, if you don't rob the bank, I'm going to murder your children. Philosophers will typically say you don't have free will in those cases.
Yeah.
Undergraduates commonly say you have free will, because of course you could not do it. You don't have to do it. So I think there is a way of viewing agency that is insensitive to sort of context-driven things like duress and necessity that you find in undergraduates and non-philosophers that you don't find in philosophers. So that would explain the always, because there I think, well, look, I already know like cases of duress are exceptions. So for me, the always is false.
Right.
Whereas if you have a sort of like
agree with you.
view, yeah,
I completely agree with you in this specific point, but I would suggest a good first. Let me propose a metaphor. I mean, I like metaphors. I think the free will inventory is like the questionnaire that freed us from the captivity in Egypt, but we're still kind of strolling 40 years in the desert, kind of. Sorry for the metaphor, but it's exactly what it is, you know? The free will inventory freed us from terrible questionnaires that were not even capable of measuring the phenomena. And now we have to, let us say, we have to sharp our tools, our knives. We have to ameliorate our tools. One suggestion that I'll give that kind of answers the problem of the always and the Likert scales is the following. We can use Likert scales. The case I was commenting that in this specific question, I think the logic answer is binary. It doesn't rule out the possibility of using Likert scales. But what I will do to ameliorate such a questionnaire is to differentiate statistical distribution of a certain behavior from levels of confidence in a certain belief. So when you ask, do you believe that? Oh, how often it happens? This, I mean, the phrasing that I'm using is very bad. Of course, I can imagine a better phrasing than mine, but I think we will have a more specific way of asking by using words that suggest statistical distribution versus words that suggest levels of confidence in a certain belief. That is my suggestion. I mean, I don't know, we can work together on generating a new questionnaire. You can use these ideas because I'm just willing to promote progress in science. Does not matter who is doing the job.
of course.
We can collaborate, whatever. I just think that at this point, the relationship between statistical distribution and levels of confidence in a certain belief must be disentangled. That's my criticism here, and I think it's a fair one.
Yeah, no, by the way, I would, I mean, it's fine with me if we totally retooled this. I'm just not sure how what you're suggesting is supposed to help. So if I imagine this, I say, how strongly, I could say, how strongly do you believe in fill in the blank? And now we're just doing what I already have. Or you can say, do you believe in the following statement? And if you do that, you're going to get dichotomous answers that are unhelpful from the standpoint of validating a scale. You can't have, it's just, there's a reason why you can't have dichotomous scales. Or trichotomous scales. Yes, I don't know, maybe. You're losing a tremendous amount of variance if you force choice like that. That's the worry. So I'm happy. That's not about whether we use this scale or some other scale. It's just a function of like how to get what. I'm happy to help you try to figure out how to get what you want. I'm just not sure how to do it. We'd have to talk a lot about it, I think. But I'm certainly open to it. The scale's been around for a while, so I'm happy for there to be a new scale.
Yeah, by the suggestion I'm proposing here, it still works with fully Likert scales. Is viable to be validated. It just tries to disentangle things that happen from things that we believe. This is a kind of strategy to disentangle ontology from epistemology, or ontology from levels of confidence or credence, let us say, levels of confidence in beliefs. That's
so just
we'll
just
have
give me
to
an
discuss
example.
that in detail afterwards. I'm sure.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Good.
Just one question here. It's Noel. Very interesting suggestion. He's asking if 6 was labeled almost always and 2 labeled almost never, Wouldn't that help? What do you think, Thomas? What do you think, Gabriel? I sincerely don't know.
Oh, really quick.
In this case, I would say that the answer Thomas gave to me will be even more correct. It will be a big problem. I disagree with Noel. Please, Thomas.
Well, but the thing is, the answers are from strongly disagree to strongly agree. So that almost always and almost never, there's nowhere to put them because the scale is on an agreement. You could say people nearly always have free will. That would help fix it. Yes. Like I said, the only reason we went with the stronger thing is because, I mean, when I say these things were at scale, I mean, we're at ceiling. They were like close to ceiling. But the never thing would, or almost always would partly address Gabriel's worry, but not really, because you're still not addressing what he's interested in, which is whether you're getting at beliefs or confidence in beliefs. So I don't think it wouldn't fix his problem, but you couldn't put it on it couldn't go on the scale itself because it's all just agreement or disagree. Yeah. I
completely agree with you, Thomas.
Yeah, strongly agree.
I strongly agree with you, Thomas. Agree. 7.
Okay. So I've been.
That was a good joke.
I've been showing during our discussion. This to me was one of the very interesting ones. This is the human mind cannot simply be reduced to the brain. Attention to the cannot, and strongly disagree gets the smallest results, and agree it's one of it's the biggest one, and strongly agree it's the second one. So that is interesting as well. As much as I don't like it personally. Marcel, please chip in.
Bring it to Marcelo, please.
I have an observation while you were scrolling through the items. I had the impression that a lot of the items have a bimodal distribution. And I don't know whether this is usually the case. So that might indicate that indeed there might be a distinction in your population, maybe between philosophers and non-philosophers, whatever. With this last question, I was always wondering whether this can be misunderstood in a way, because you could say, now it's not only the brain, it's also the body that plays a role. So you could have a kind of embodied idea of the topic, which wouldn't mean that you are a dualist in a way, but simply assume that embodiment plays a role. And I wonder whether philosophers might understand that wrongly. Well, most people presumably don't.
I completely agree with Marcel. I think that's a great comment. I think actually this is one of the main critiques I would have to the free will inventory in general. The free will inventory begs the question against a non-reductive materialist like Peter and me, for example. I mean, and I completely understand that that's not a fault from the creators of the free will inventory. It's just because when you are working with Likert scales, you want to have this maximum power question and see how they decline in terms of acceptance. But I don't feel contemplated. I don't feel personally. I don't fit in some of the questions of the questionnaire exactly because of the reasons Marcel just mentioned. You can be a physicalist, but non-fully reductive in terms of various different ideas of reductionism. It can be like fully causal reductive and non-ontological reductive, or the other way around. I mean,
yeah, what I want to say is that for most people, the item will work as a dualist item, but maybe for philosophers it won't.
Exactly.
I don't know. I don't know what you think, Thomas.
I mean,
yes, for sure, Marcel. Yes, that's right. But I can't make a scale that is simultaneously going to be useful for like a popular, like a normal audience of people, and
No,
also that carves out everything
Yeah.
in the way that philosophers might carve them
Thomas,
out.
that was not a criticism of the scale. It was simply trying to explain these results in a way that, because, I mean, if you see the results first, you think, oh, even these philosophers are dualists. And that is a little bit surprising, isn't it?
Yes.
It was not a criticism of the scale. It was an attempt to explain why maybe the interpretation here in this case is not the one that one would have in a normal population.
Oh, I see. I think I was more responding to Gabriel's worry that somehow sort of it didn't carve things at the right joints for like a non-reductive physicalist. And that seems right. So all that stuff seems right. It wasn't so much I thought that wasn't right. That seems clearly true to me, that this is not going to have that effect. I guess I was sort of, as a follow-up, wanting to say, I'm not sure that what we want to do is fix that, which is different. So I think you're absolutely right. What you said will explain, surely is partly explains the results in this population. That part seems right. I didn't mean to be suggesting that was problematic. That seems totally right to me.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so battery, just a second.
And Marcel, I should thank you for using this scale.
Troca o meu aí, que o meu tem acho que pouco de bateria. Yeah, no, he's not.
Sorry, he's not. Did you hear Marcel?
No, no.
All right, just a second.
It's okay, Renato, I'm fine.
Okay, so we'll just finish the results.
Now we have batteries for both.
Okay.
So you can give one to Victoria to pass around the audience.
Okay, so let me just finish
The results.
showing the results. So people could have free will, even if scientists discover all of the laws that govern human behavior. These are the results. To have free will means that a person's decisions and actions could not be perfectly predicted by someone else, no matter how much information they had. Here we are. If it turned out that people lacked non-physical or immaterial souls, then they would lack free will. To have free will is to be able to cause things to happen in the world without at the same time being caused to make those things happen. People have free will as long as they are able to do what they want without being coerced or constrained by other people. To be responsible for our present decisions and actions, we must also be responsible for our prior decisions and actions that led up to the present moment. Okay. So people deserve to be blamed and punished for bad actions only if they acted of their own free will.
And yeah, this is the one that you have to comment as a lawyer, please. Please.
No, I have to comment the other one. I have to comment the one on rehabilitation. Yes, okay. People who harm others deserve to be punished, even if punishing them will not produce any positive benefits to either the offender society, rehabilitation, deterring other would-be offenders, etc. This is clearly a question about pure retributivism and the idea that people should be punished, even that could not bring any benefits. As Thomas nicely put in his talk yesterday, the idea that people deserve to be punished just because, it's just dessert. And I have a lot of problems with that, Thomas, as well, as you've seen yesterday. And we have a nice, interesting result here as well. So, do you want to comment on this, Thomas?
Thomas, are you there?
Yes. Yeah, I'm here. So what's the? I'm not sure.
Retributive crowd. I mean,
yeah, the crowd is much less retributive than an average lay people crowd.
It's not surprising. I mean, I think these things go together, right? So the free will items go with the retributive items. I think the crowd believe probably less in free will than sort of a non-academic audience. But so I guess I'm not, this is, if you'd asked me in advance to sort of predict, I would have predicted lower retributivism scores, lower dualism scores, here again, lower relative to what we normally find, lower free will scores, way lower libertarian scores. So I think all that goes together. Now, what might be nice, instead of, because I don't think it's just going to be philosophical training, it's going to be something else, and it'd be nice to figure out what that something else is.
Any ideas?
Like what is it that makes it such that, like, a group of people who are legal scholars, philosophers, neuroscientists, psychologists, etc., that have different backgrounds, and I don't imagine it's just education level. It might be a kind of self-selection, but I think it'd be nice to know. From if what you want to know is how to move people away from the sort of strong pure retributivism, then it would be nice to know what has already moved people away from a strong retributivism. So for that purpose, I think it's great. So yeah.
Yeah, I think with the tools that we have currently, we couldn't kind of understand the whys, because I mean, maybe if we split the populations and do comparison studies, we're going to find more of a, let us say, a rational basis to respond to, but not at that level of analysis for sure.
Okay, so we are already 10 minutes over. I would just present the rest of the results, and then we can
wrap this thing. Yeah.
People who perform harmful actions ought to be rehabilitated, so they no longer pose a threat to society. That seems to have had a lot of agreement. People who perform harmful actions ought to be punished so that other potential offenders are deterred from committing similar harmful actions. Okay. Yes. People could be morally responsible even if scientists discovered all of the laws that govern human behavior. Okay, so agreed. Also the majority, large majority. And now the religious questions. How often do you think about religious issues? I mean, it's not really a good question, because a lot of people answered, I think a lot, and I don't believe in any kind of religiosity. Probably they study something like it. A lot of people had 1 all over in the rest, and 5. I think a lot about religiosity, but I have no religiosity at all. To what extent do you believe that God or something divine exists? So chip in, yeah. People that believe, and a lot of people that don't as well. So that is not the normal distribution we expect. And then
really quick.
Sorry.
Yeah, what were the anchors? So it's 1 to 5. What were the labels?
1 to 5. 1 to 5. Yes. So how often do you pray? 1 would be never, 2 rarely, 3 occasionally, 4 often, and 5 very often.
Got it.
This is always on an upward scale. How often do you pray? How often do you experience situations in which you have the feeling that God or something divine intervenes with your life? 1 is never, 2 rarely, 3 occasionally, 4 often, 5 very often. And okay, so I think we have a lot to do yet. I'm sorry this is not more well developed. The intentions are good, Thomas, and the crowd. Marcel, thanks for the suggestion. We will have a look if there is a problem of this differences in population, or maybe it's just a problem that specialists don't normally distribute, and they have strong opinions either to one side or the other. Maybe that is a thing too. Let's see. Thank you all very much. Yeah. So,
Renato,
yes, please, Thomas.
can I just say one last thing? Because it's to the spirit of this entire project, not this one, all of them. I've spent the last 2 years of my life undoing most of what I did in the previous 10 years. So I don't mind. The criticisms are, this is how progress is made, my friend. So
Exactly.
I don't mind that at all.
Exactly.
It's perfectly
Exactly.
fine. Very
Exactly.
helpful.
Exactly. And Thomas, I had a second more methodological comment that goes in the same direction of my two first. I think the second part, if we have a shorter questions instead of phrases that have relations of dependence, if we have like more atomic phrases instead of long periods, that will help a lot. We'll have more precision to identify clear atomic beliefs and not relations that are logically dependent from each other. That's another suggestion I'll give. But yeah, I'll have to close it. I don't talk about that specific subject later in more detail, but yeah.
Thomas, it's very good to hear this from you. The slide that impacted me the most out of your last presentation, not this one, the one in the middle of the year, was this guy sitting on a branch and sawing its own branch. And I mean, I think that's how philosophy and science should be done. You can't
Exactly.
be comfortable, and you do that. That is an inspiration of how things should be done in science, right? So yeah, congrats for that.
Thanks for the generosity. Thanks for morreu a bateria de novo. Thanks for the generosity, Thomas. Thanks for the availability, for the chivalry, and we are going to have lunch now, and we are resuming our activities soon. Thanks, everyone.
Boa almoçar.